Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel STEWART Paintings. On today's video we are going to paint this lovely dolphin painting tutorial in acrylic paints and create this realistic gorgeous sunset landscape. So let's get into it. Now these are the colours you're going to need for this tutorial. They are yellow, orange, purple, blue, black, green and white. Now all these colours can be made from these core colours, but indigo is made from blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of green and a little bit of purple, and Prussian blue, which we're going to colour the dolphins in, is just blue and a little bit of black. And please have a hairdryer handy because it makes stages much easier to complete and we can move along much quicker. And please have a set of baby wipes or some kitchen towel just in case you make a mistake. Now if you'd like to pause the video, you can just jot down this brief outline. All I've done is use a burnt sienna canvas that I've measured the horizon line about halfway down using some chalk. The reason I've used chalk is like always, if you make a mistake you can just rub it away with your finger, and by using a measuring tape or a ruler you will make sure your horizon is lovely and straight, and by having the dolphins in the middle it will create a lovely easy composition that will draw the viewer's eyes. Now the first thing we're going to do is block in our dolphins. So I'm just using a cobalt blue to block in the dolphins. I'm not really worried about any detail, I'm just blocking it in. We're not going to, the first stage we're just going to block everything in. We're not going to worry about details, so don't worry if your painting looks quite rough in these early stages, that's to be expected. And the reason I'm using a darker tone in the blue is just so when we paint in our gorgeous sunset we've got a rough outline of where our dolphins are. So if we by accident go over them, we can just touch them up later, that's not a worry. Now a lot of people ask me why I use a burnt sienna and why I use chalk. Well, chalk you can just paint over, as you can clearly see here. So if I make a mistake or I want to change anything, I can just paint over it and it doesn't leave any marks. The thing is with a lead pencil, because it's a much darker tone and because it's a dark pencil, it sometimes leaves horrible dirty marks on your canvas, and especially in a minute when we're going to paint things like yellow and light yellow, if you've got a smudge of dirty sort of black lead pencil, it will leave a tone which is quite hard to paint over sometimes. But by just using the burnt sienna you can clearly see where you need extra layers of paint as well. So if I've made a mistake, you can clearly see with these dolphins that they would need another layer because the burnt sienna is shining through the blue. So what it does, it just allows you to see where you need to rework things. It's a great thing to be more professional and just see where you need to take your time and just add bits, add a bit more paint, touch bits up because you've got the burnt sienna shining through. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some Naples yellow, which is basically white and yellow, and this is going to be our sun. So this area of the sky is going to be the brightest area. So I'm just using a cad yellow around that, so any bright yellow will be fine, and we're just going to block this area in. Now all we're doing, don't worry if it's messy, is blocking all the burnt sienna. So we're just going to try to cover it. We're just going to do that very quick and fast. So don't worry if it's messy, just try to go around your dolphin and try to not cover it completely. But as I say, if you do, we've painted him in a dark tone, you can just touch him up later, so don't worry about that. So just by adding a sort of lighter tone, that's going to give the illusion of the sun. Now as we get further away from the sun, it's going to get a bit darker in tone, the sky, so we're going to create this lovely orange and yellow tone, and that's going to be sort of this peach tone, and that's going to be away from our sun. So as we get further away the sky gets a little bit cooler, but it's still super bright because obviously the sun is incredibly warm and incredibly bright. So we just want to create this lovely transition between the orange and the yellow. So by just blocking it in, as you can see, we're just gradually creating where we want things to be. Now by adding some lavender, which is just purple, and a ton of white, we can create a lovely tone above that. And now what lavender does is it gives a nice subtle transition between orange and things like purple or blue later in the sky. If you jump from orange to blue, it's quite a harsh transition. So by creating a lovely bridge tone in lavender, you can create a seamless in transition. But as I say, don't worry, we're just blocking everything in, so don't worry if it's a bit messy. So now we're going to just add light blue, which is just basically a dab of blue and lots and lots of white to create a lovely pastel blue tone. So as you can see clearly, again, we will have to give this another layer, and that's just fine, that's no worries. But by showing you the burnt sienna shining through, we can really see what the difference is and how thick you have to have the paint with acrylics. So you can clearly see there you would have to rework it. Now this is great if you have a hairdryer, so as I say, you can just dry bits and go over it. But we're going to do the clouds first. We're just going to add some purple and white, so just a bit of a darker tone. So just purple and white, and we're just going to paint in all this cloud line which goes down to the horizon where it meets the sea. So again, don't worry if it's all messy, don't worry, we're just trying to slap that paint on. We're just trying to cover up as much of that burnt sienna as we can. And don't worry if you make a mistake, we can just rub it out with your finger, or use a bit of kitchen roll or a bit of baby wipes, whatever you've got, just to sort of, if you hit your dolphin or make any mistakes, it's not to worry about. Okay, so once you've finished the last cloud, we're gonna just neaten it a little bit up there, and then we're gonna do some clouds in the sky. So all I'm doing, it doesn't matter if the paint's wet, because as I say, we're just blocking everything in. We're just gonna take some of that darker purple tone, and we're just gonna darken up the corners and just do the impression of clouds in the far distance. So by darkening up the corners, again, as I keep saying to you, we're going to draw the viewer's eyes. So now at the bottom, we're going to just do a dark tone underneath these dolphins. So all I'm going to do is just use that purple and white and just block in sort of a shadow underneath where our dolphins are. And as always, just blocking in the corners and the base of the painting. The reason it's purple and it's so dark is because obviously that's going to be the furthest away from the light source, so it's going to get cooler. Because if you think that part of the ocean is really far from that distant sun. So I'm just going to take some of the lavender and I'm just going to go around these corners and just going up to the horizon. And I'm just doing the same, just around. I'm just blocking it in. And as I say, don't worry, we put many layers onto this work. It's not a problem. And you can add a little bit of the pastel blue. You can add a bit of white and blue to that lavender, just to make a nice cool ocean tone just here on the horizon. And as I say, don't worry if it's messy, don't worry if it looks really amateurish at the moment and scruffy. We're just trying to get all that paint on. Now in the middle, so think of a mirror. So think of what's above you is going to be below you. So think of if the heat source is right above you, it's also going to shine down right below you. So think of that yellow, it's going to be reflected onto the water. So by just using the same tone or a rough about tone, we can create the illusion of the sun reflecting onto our ocean waves. So by using yellow around the yellow, we're just mirroring what's above it. So look, if you see, we're just trying to create the illusion that the sun is going to reflect that heat, that light source onto the bottom. Now as again, just like the sky, we're just going to add orange to that mix, and we're just going to make a transition just while it's wet and blend them all together. So look, just blending the two tones together, we're just creating the illusion of a mirror effect. And because we've got that lavender and it's still wet, we're just going to mix these tones together just so the transitions aren't so harsh. So again, it's just all about tricking the viewer's eyes. It's starting to come together now, as you can see. So just add yellow and orange and just go down and just follow it down. And as I say, in the middle is going to be where the heat source is, so that's why it's so orange in the middle. There we go. Easy peasy. Now look, because that top bit is starting to dry, just by adding a layer you can see quite clearly now it's more prominent. with that burnt sienna, we can see where we have to work on. So by just going over the top in acrylics, you can either use a hairdryer or you can just wait till it's dry. Obviously we've been doing the bottom half, so this bit is pretty dry, so we're just going over the top with the exact same paints to make it look more professional and make it look better. So by just going over the top with some bright yellow, look at the difference there. You can really see which bit's been reworked and which bit hasn't. So just by, if you do each stage properly, so if you just think before you move on to another stage, get that stage finished and complete and all happy with, all dry, then you can move on to the next stage. So just by adding some orange and yellow here, look, we're just going over it, and you can look how much brighter those tones look to the previous tones. They look so much brighter by adding a second layer. Now if you have to add a third layer or a fourth layer, that's totally up to you. As I say, each person is going to be either really pedantic and really notice every bit they've missed. Another person, they like that style and they just do one layer and that's what they're happy with. But what I'm trying to show you is you can clearly see acrylics dry a lot darker. You can see that now. Look at the blue dolphins, for example. They almost look black because of that burnt sienna. So by reworking things and letting it dry, you'll see how much darker they dry. So by just adding orange to this corner, it's creating the illusion of a seamless transition now. Can you start to see it? The sky, there's not so much, you don't notice where the yellow and the orange change. So as I say, the thing with acrylic paints and the thing is with painting, your work will look scruffy towards the middle stage of your painting. It's gonna look quite rough and ready. And if you make a mistake like I just did now, just use your fingers or use some baby wipes. Don't be afraid of this stage. Just get the paint on. But you can clearly see with the darkened corners what we're doing. We're trying to draw the viewer's eyes into the middle. So just using some of that orange, we're just creating the illusion of heat, the illusion of these waves, and it's just getting darker as it goes further away from the heat source. So look, really easy, nothing hard. It's already starting to take shape. So we've got a nice blocked in painting and we're going to rework everything and make it all proper and professional looking now. So we're just going to take some Naples yellow and we're going to go over our sun and make it look much more prominent. And the reason we're going to make it so prominent and so bright is because we want those dolphins, when we finally finish them towards the end, we want them to really stand out and we want them to really pop. If they're very dark and you've got very bright background in the sun and the lovely gorgeous orange and yellow sky, it will bring those dolphins forward into the foreground and make them pop and make them look really realistic, as in silhouetted against the lovely bright background. So just by creating this super bright tone and mixing some orange into that, and we create this lovely sort of darker yellow, we're just creating the illusion of that hyper realistic, hyper super bright tone of the sky and the sun. And just by adding more orange as we get further away from it, we're just getting darker and darker and darker. Now the good thing is, if it's dry, you can see clearly, you can compare the colors, but also you can transition the two. If you notice, I use hardly any water with acrylics. I literally use almost a dry brush and barely any water. And the reason I do that is because I can blend the tones together really easy, and I can just rework areas. So if I need to heighten something up and brighten it with a orange tone, I can do that, and if I have to darken it with a cooler tone, I can do that. But by just using hardly any water, I'm not as well getting lots of streaks on my canvas. I'm just using enough water that my brush flows nicely and it's nice and soft, but not too much to create a wet sort of streaky marks on my painting. So again, look, think of the mirror effect. We're just going to go below the sun onto what is going to be our sea and just create the exact same illusion. So we're just going to create the illusion of heat. So look, you can see there, but just adding water, you get that streaky effect on the canvas. So that's the reason I hardly use much water. I only use enough that I can sort of blend in, because I don't want to create streaks on my work. I want it to look very prominent and I want it to look very natural. And the reason you have really natural transitions is, I keep saying to you in all these videos, is because your eyes are so fantastic, they notice these things. So look, just by using some bright orange in these corners, just a little tad, we're just making that area really prominent, really stand out, and we're trying to get these transitions seamless. Things like round-headed brushes, larger brushes, they're really good. You can get things like blender brushes that are really fantastic for doing that. They're almost like a makeup brush, and they're really great for blending tones together. So if you want to invest with them, they're not expensive. Just things like these round-headed brushes that I use, because I paint every day. I go through so many brushes. I just use cheap ones, so they're very cheap. But just round-headed brushes are really good for blending, because they're so soft and they're so easy to use. They're really nice. Okay, so that's all the orange part done. So we're going to take some lavender, and it's purple, lots and lots of white, and we're going to add a tiny bit of yellow to it to heat it up a bit, and we're going to try to make a bridge tone to bridge into that fantastically bright orange sunset. And all we're going to do is we're just going to take a dry brush and we're going to try to merge the two tones together to create another transition that isn't so harsh for your eyes to notice. Obviously we're going to paint in things like clouds, so don't worry too much. We're going to cover bits off, so if you do have a bits of harsh transitions between the gradients of color, that is not to worry. But by just adding a bit of lavender, and as again, just think of the orange, as we get further away it gets a bit cooler, so we're adding a bit more lavender and a little less yellow in that far corner, and we're just going to create with a dry brush and just blend it with my fingers. We can use a big brush, and we're just going to take some lavender and we're just going to create sort of like the illusion of streamers, sort of like clouds, the sort of wisp of clouds with that lavender tone. And we're just going to create the illusion of shapes in the sky, and as I say, with a dry brush you just graze across the canvas. We'll just create the illusion of these sort of floater clouds, these sort of wispy clouds, like marshmallow sort of shapes. So that just by doing that, we're just creating the illusion of these clouds. Now we're going to take some purple and white to get this lovely tone, and we're going to add a little tiny bit of the pastel blue to it and a bit of the lavender, and we're just going to have a little bit darker but not too dark pastel lavender color, and we're just going to create some highlights on these clouds. So we're just going to create some shapes again. So think of marshmallows, just create some nice wispy clouds just using that tone. And again, it's just going to bridge the warms and the cools together. We're just trying to merge the two together. So there we go. So just white, tiny bit of that pastel blue, and a tiny bit of purple, and you just get this nice, cool, bright sort of lavender tone. There we go. And by mixing the two with the orange, it's just trying to create the illusion of shapes of clouds in the far distance. And because that tone is so subtle, it's so light, it's not overwhelming. If you do a really dark tone, it really brings things forward. So by having that nice tone, it's pushing it back. Now we're going to do the opposite. Now we're going to take these clouds and we're going to do the horizon, and all we've got is purple and white. But you can clearly see now, because it's a second layer, look how bright that is. It's fantastic. Look how wonderful that is. And because we've got a bit of the burnt sienna underneath it, it actually creates like a warm tone around that sun. It looks really good. So we're just going to create the illusion of clouds, and these are going to be the shadow parts of the clouds. So every cloud has a highlight and a shadow. So think of, if you put your hand, you're going to have a shadow effect where your hand hits the light. So all clouds are going to be the same. We're going to have a shadow side and a bright side. So just by using a really prominent darker purple now, we're just going to create the illusion of these clouds. So as I say, don't worry if your dolphins look manky. We're going to do the dolphins last. I know they look a bit terrible. They look like a bit of a withered dead dolphin. But we're going to put them in last because they're the best bit. So we'll put them in towards the end. So as I say, because they're quite prominent in that dark blue, we know where they are. So don't worry. Don't spend time working on them when we're blocking in now. So look at that. Look how bright now that is. It's making those dolphins, the dark tones stand out a lot more. Wow, look how fantastic that looks. That purple is gorgeous. Now the great thing is I remembered not to sing while I was filming this video, because last week when I did a painting tutorial and I was singing and singing away, and when I sped the footage up, I looked like a horse chewing some hay. So I thought ahead and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm not going to sing along to my music while I'm painting, so I shouldn't look like a horse in this video. So if you want to see something funny, watch the seascape acrylic painting. Watch my lips if you ever want to see something classic and funny. Right, so we're going to take some darker blue, which is basically blue, white, dotted black and a bit of purple, and we're just going to paint the corners in just to make them look a bit darker. Just a bit on this horizon line. I'm just going to make it a little bit more bluer, a little bit more cooler. But our sky is really taking shape, so it's starting to look really nice. So we're going to start doing some impressions of waves. So just by using that blue tone and leaving gaps of the orange, look how quickly we're going to create the illusion of waves. So by leaving gaps in the original underpainting, so I've shown you on previous videos, what that does is that creates the illusion of the heat and the cool on the waves. So just look, just blend in with my finger, just so I don't want too harsh transitions. The closer you get to the horizon, the flatter the waves are, because obviously it's further away, and also the less prominent they are. So you want your waves that are really far away towards the sun to not be very dark. So even if that means just giving them a rub with your finger or using a baby wipe or something, just try to make them look flat and try to make them look less prominent. So that's why I'm licking my finger and just licking the paint here, because I don't want them to really stand out, because as I say, the darker the tone, the more it brings it forward. So we want to push them really far back. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just letting the paint run out. I've got hardly any water, but it's just giving the impression of waves. That's all we're doing. So look, just by creating just lines, leaving that underpainting to shine through, we're just giving the illusion of waves. Now I don't want to be really harsh around that sun, because obviously that's really bright. So even though there's some little waves there, there's not too many. So I'm going to make some indigo now. Now all indigo is blue and a little bit of green and a tiny bit of black and a tiny bit of purple, and that gives that really dark sea tone, that shadow sea tone. So you want to add a little bit of green to it, because that gives that lovely sort of dark phthalo turquoise kind of colour, like this phthalo green. And it's this really dark earthy green tone that the sea is. And all I'm doing, I'm creating almost like zigzags, like the letter Y. And I'm just, again, look, leaving gaps. Because we've just put down that blue tone, it's looking like shadows and looking like ripples. So we're creating the illusion of the water. So as I was saying to you previously, it's really quick how your painting comes together, but the middle stage, a lot of people get disillusioned because they're going, oh, my painting doesn't look very good. Well, no painting looks very good when you're in the middle stage. All the blocking in is always going to be rough. But look, as you can clearly see now how quick it's all starting to come together. So that's what I was saying to you about being comfortable, getting every section right before you move forward, and just taking your time will really help you in the long run. Because if you're happy with it, you move forward, you can go on to the next stage and just add these things like the waves. And because we've taken our time in the first stage and we've got those tones right, it's all in the tones. Look, it's starting to create the illusion of a lovely ocean sea with all these waves. Look at this, just by adding, look, hardly any water, And again, look, I don't want to be too prominent as I go up. I want less harsh waves as I'm going nearer to the sun, because obviously they're closer to the sun. They're not going to be as harsh and they're going to be more flat. So what that is doing is making the bottom of our painting look closer towards the viewer. So look, you've got to be careful. You can even, if you're ever worried, if you're ever a bit nervous about doing a section like that, you can always dry it before you move on. So you can always do an insurance policy by just using some hairdryer. Now all I've got here is some Prussian blue, which is basically blue with a bit of black in it. Not too much black, because we want to keep the majority of the time blue. Black is very overwhelming. It really takes all the colour out of a colour. So we just want to darken up the corners, and we want to create the real shadow effect in this this part of the painting, which is nearest to the viewer, of the waves. So what we're doing, we're just using Prussian blue. Now you can buy Prussian blue, but as I say, I don't want to obviously exclude people who haven't got the access to every tone of paint. So just blue and a little bit of black will create Prussian blue. And obviously where these dolphins are popping out of the water, this is going to be the darkest area, because this is going to be the shadow of where they have popped out. So we want to just create the illusion of waves, just a little Y shapes. Just think of zigzags, just draw Y's and Z's in the water, and just always leave the underpainting. Don't ever cover up too much, and that will give the illusion of a 3D effect. So look, just Y's and Z's, just creating weird little shapes, little lines. I'm using a round brush here, but you can even use a flat brush, because sometimes if you use a flat brush, you can do really, really nice straight lines. So if you're doing waves, you can do the sort of the zigzag effect really, really easy with a flat brush. Now this lovely tone, we're just going to create a lighter version of it. So we're just going to add a little bit of white and a bit of purple to it, and we're just going to really darken up those corners in our sky. So again, we're drawing the viewer's eyes to the middle, because we want those viewers to look straight at our dolphins and straight at our sea and our sun. So by darkening up the corners, we're doing that. So now we're going to fill in our dolphins with that Prussian blue that we just did the waves in. So all it is blue and black, and we're just going to go over our dolphins and just give them a nice coat. So we're just going to make them look much more prominent now. So you can take your time. You can even, this is a acrylic tutorial, but you could even, once they are dry, you could even add a bit of oil paint and give them the illusion of a shimmer. So by giving them a bit of a shine, you could always do that. So that is no worries. By just using that Prussian blue, we don't want to use jet black, because jet black does look a bit unrealistic. So by just using a little bit off black, by adding some blue, we've got this lovely, more realistic tone for our dolphins. So look, just painting them in, nothing too hard. I really like this picture. It looks like a mummy and a baby dolphin, so it's a nice one. It's a nice composition. So look, there's our dolphins. They're looking really, really nice. So let's get a smaller brush, and we're just going to add in some little bits of detail. So we're just going to take some lighter blue, and we're just going to create the illusion of the splash, all sort of the ripples, all the sort of drips and drags of the water. And because it's just a bit of blue, a bit of purple and a bit of white, it's kind of just the bits of water trickling down from the dolphins' tails and hitting that sort of wash into the waves. So we're just taking a smaller brush and we're just adding some of that detail. So look, if you have to go over your dolphins, if they're as I say, it's up to you. If you want to really work on them, you could even add a shimmer if you wanted to. You could even add a bit of a glow around them where the light's hitting them. But we're just going to do them nice and prominent with the Prussian blue. We're just going to create that silhouette effect. So I'm just going to add his little nose, his little baby nose. That's so cute. I've literally just come back from Ibiza, and my wife is from Ibiza, and loads of her family go sailing and they go out to Formentera and things like that, and you get to see dolphins all the time. So it's a wonderful experience if you get to see some dolphins. They're gorgeous. So while I've got that really dark Prussian blue, I'm just going to create a bit of a shadow below this big mama dolphin. I'm just going to create the illusion. I'm just blending it into the already dry work we've got here, and just the same in the corners. I'm just trying to create the illusion around the baby now. Just not too much, just a little bit, just around them, just to make the illusion of the shadow underneath the two of them. Now please dry your work here with a hairdryer, because we're going to add a complete opposite tone. We're going to add some yellow and orange. Now if your dolphin is not dry, it's going to hit that Prussian blue and you're going to get a horrible drag of Prussian blue all over your lovely ocean. So by just getting a flat brush and some yellow and orange, I'm going to create the illusion of a shimmer on the sun reflecting onto those waves. So just where you've got waves, if you take a flat brush and just create lines, and again just blend it into that dry painting, and all it is just yellow and orange, and we're just creating the illusion of waves and the sunlight hitting them. So I've just got a bit of darker tones, so a bit of more orange into the tone, not too much, and I'm just going a bit further out. So just think the yellow's in the middle, and I'm just going to go around that. And what that's doing is just creating the illusion of the light hitting those waves, just to make it a little bit more 3D. So look, just by creating lines, that's why I was saying earlier about using a flat brush. It's really easy, just create straight lines with a flat brush. And look, you've got this really nice contrast now of the dark cools in the corner and the brights in the middle. So look, all I'm taking is some yellow and white, and I'm going straight down from that sun. So almost like a straight line, but I'm leaving gaps, I'm leaving little lines. Again, think of the underpainting, and that's going to create the illusion of the sun. So there we go, we've got this fantastic, beautiful painting that was really quick, really nice. And it looks really realistic, and it's super easy to paint. Now, as I was saying to you before, you can use this silhouette technique with lots of other things. So if you have anything you want to paint, you can do that with lots of other things. But by just creating the illusion of the dolphins popping out and using the dark Prussian blue, it just looks fantastic, and it looks super realistic, and it's no trouble at all, and it's a really easy painting tutorial. So I hope you've really enjoyed it. Let's take a picture of it, because I think she is a gorgeous painting. I think it's a lovely composition, and that is a fantastic finished painting for something that's taken you just over half an hour. So this is Ibiza, this is where my wife's family's from, and this is where we get to see lots of beautiful dolphins in the wild. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully tune in to much more of my painting tutorials here on YouTube. Take care.